Hello, my name is Peggy McPhillips and I am the Norfolk City Historian. That means I get to talk about all sorts of pieces of Norfolk's exciting present in terms of what went on there in the past. And it is an exciting time to be in Norfolk. We are celebrating the 100th birthday of Naval Station Norfolk. We have a brand new, exciting, renovated waterside district opening, and down on the corner of Main and Granby Street, we have the new Hilton, known as the Main. That block, occupied by the Hilton on Granby Street between Main and Plume Streets, can actually tell us much of the story of the city of Norfolk. Norfolk was founded in that area. That area was there when Norfolk began, back in 1680, when an act by King Charles II of England dictated that a port town of 50 acres should be founded in each of Virginia's counties. Now, not all of the counties complied, but Norfolk County sure did. We had our 50 acres surveyed and laid out into streets and lots for houses and businesses and public conveniences and inconveniences. We had a ducking stool. One of the streets in Norfolk, we only had a very few streets, but one of the streets laid out on that original survey was called the Main Street, and that's where the Main is today. Another street that was laid out was the only street that went in and out of town by land. We were almost completely surrounded by water, and that street was called the Street That Leadeth Into the Woods. Later on, we would name it the Street That Leadeth Out of Town when we became a little more sure of ourselves, and later it became Church Street. For so many years, that was the only route in and out of town, but that's where our original commercial district began. Began in the southern end of what is now Church Street and the eastern end of what is now Main Street. Norfolk grew, as you can see by looking at an overview of Norfolk today. You can see the outline, that red outline of the original 50 acres superimposed on downtown Norfolk today. You'll notice that that little red outline doesn't go quite all the way to the water today. That's because there was a lot of colonial landfill and all sorts of things to fill in the land over the years. So when you're standing in one of those big, tall downtown financial buildings, you're actually standing on what used to be water, but they've got lots of really good, strong pilings, so you're okay. To frame it another way, we can see the outline of that little 50 acres on an outline of today's downtown. And we see what looks like a little tiny red submarine down there in the very, very, very lower corner of Norfolk today. That's where Norfolk began. Norfolk would grow, of course. By 1802, we had grown into north of Main Street into the West Freemason Street district. But we were still almost completely surrounded by water, and the little creek that bordered the original 50 acres is today's City Hall Avenue. And those of you who remember how Granby and City Hall Avenue used to flood so badly before the seawall went in, that's why Mother Nature remembered that there used to be a creek there. In 1818, a little bridge was built to span the creek at Granby Street, and a residential district grew up all along the southern part of Granby Street. Now, we flash forward to 1851, we'll see that a lot of the creek had been filled in. Norfolk was a city. We had a city hall, which is today's MacArthur Memorial. That had been built. But there was still a big patch of water there, as we can see from this 1851 map. It was not completely filled in until 1905. As with much of Norfolk, that's why we still flood. The next thing to come along was the Civil War. After the Civil War, Norfolk and many other southern cities were in financial shambles. Our infrastructure was a mess. We really didn't have the economic means to fix ourselves up, get back on our feet. So what happened, as did in so many places around the South, we had investors come in, many of them from the North, to try to make a little living for themselves, but also to improve Norfolk and to get us back on our feet. One group of Northern investors came in 1870 and set up our first streetcar system. The little cars were run by horses. They were dragged along by horses the length of Main Street, up and down Church, up and down Granby. And we started to grow. People could get back and forth all day long for 7 cents a fare. And Norfolk started to grow. One Northern investor who came in right after the Civil War was a Samuel Augustus Stevens. Now, Mr. Stevens had been in his father's very successful furniture business in Baltimore from the time he was a small child. After the Civil War, he decided he was going to give it a go in Norfolk, and he wanted to build his own furniture company. He did. He came to Norfolk in 1865. He started a small business on East Main Street, and when he got enough money, he started looking around for a place to put his own furniture building. He found an abandoned marble yard on the northeast corner of Granby and Main Street, and he thought that was a pretty good location for his business. But the commercial district didn't quite extend all of that way, so he thought about it until 1867, when the Atlantic Hotel, also located on the eastern part of Main Street, burned to the ground. And the owners decided that they would rebuild on the northwest corner of Main and Granby Street, right across from that marble yard that Mr. Stevens had his eye on. So he built his own building. It was small but very elegant. It was called S.A. Stevens and Company, but everyone called it Furniture Hall. He thought it was a very good location for him because all of those people who were building elegant homes along Granby Street needed furniture and furnishings, and he was right there to provide them. That building would remain a furniture company for over a century. It was occupied later by Watt, Rettew, and Clay for many years. It was later Willis Furniture Company and later Haynes Furniture Company. Haynes was there until 1973, and when they left, the owners of the building turned the building into office space. The last occupant of the building was Icon Copying Services, and they were there until 2007, when that block was chosen to be torn down for this beautiful Hilton Hotel, The Main, that stands there today. Another investor who came, he came from Germany by way of New York, was a David Lowenberg. Mr. Lowenberg also arrived in Norfolk after the Civil War. He had lost his business during the war, and he started over on the east end of Main Street. By the 1880s, he had accumulated so much wealth that he was able to open his own building, the Lowenberg Building, along Main Street, where the Main stands today. It was an office building, and the lower floor of it was occupied by F.W. Woolworth Company 5 and 10 cent store for many, many years, when you could actually bring home a sack full of purchases, paying no more than a nickel or a dime for each item. Those were the days. Another gentleman, a local gentleman, an architect named J.E.R. Carpenter, would build his building on Plume Street, back to back with the Lowenberg Building, about 1901. That again was an office building, and the lower floor was occupied by the Norfolk evening paper, the Ledger Dispatch, in the early 1900s up until the 30s. Now, something happened in 1902 that would affect everybody in the 100 block of Granby Street on both sides. That was a fire. In January 31st, 1902, a policeman walking his beat during the night noticed a fire had broken out in a saloon next to the Atlantic Hotel. The fire quickly spread through the elevator shafts of the building that the saloon occupied, and then all the barrels of whiskey exploded. And the front of the building, the glass blew out, and the fire spread, destroying the Atlantic Hotel, the second Atlantic Hotel, and all of the blocks, all of the buildings along both sides of the 100 block of Granby, except for Furniture Hall. Furniture Hall, they had just started feeling the effects of the fire that was licking at their back walls and their roof, when all of a sudden a breeze came up from the south and it blew the fire back. And Furniture Hall sustained water damage, but nothing else. Everyone quickly rebuilt, of course, and life went on. The last building that I want to talk about is a precious neoclassical building that was on Plume Street, built in 1919 by the Guaranty Title and Trust Company as an office building for its insurance underwriters company. It only lasted 10 years. Guaranty Title and Trust went out of business during the Depression. The building stood vacant for a number of years until it was purchased by a local attorney in 1940. After that attorney, Mr. Frederick Dean, died. It was purchased by Norfolk attorney Peter Decker Jr., and it became the Decker Building. That building was also slated for demolition for the building of the main, but the city of Norfolk managed to save the facade. It took it down brick by brick by brick, and after the main was nearing completion, it put it back on the Granby Street facade of the main, brick by brick by brick, where it looks perfectly wonderful today. Norfolk has changed a lot since Mr. Stevens was here. If he could see us today, he would not recognize the place. The main street is as busy as it ever was, but it's much, much, much taller. We still have sailors downtown, but now they're dressed in civvies. We don't have the sea of white hats that we had during the war. Passengers come off of cruise ships, there's ships reunions. Downtown is a busy, busy, busy happening place where we love to remember our past. We are proud of our present, and we are looking forward with great excitement to what the future holds. It's a good place to be today. Thank you.